Okay, good evening, everyone. Good evening. All right. I'm really glad that Mr. Rakesh took the previous session on gamification for the enterprise because we're going to touch a lot of those concepts as well right here. And I'm sure we've heard the word gamification quite a lot of times today. So I'm going to start off this by taking a step back. Okay. Firstly, I'll introduce myself. My name is Mahesh. I work as a product manager at this company called Knowledgescape. We have a booth outside. We are an experiential software learning company, and we specialize in behavioral as well as functional training products as well, right? So we have a number of these games through which you can learn different concepts like leadership, negotiation, influencing skills, and so on, okay? So today we're going to take up the concept of learning and also dive deep into programming languages as well, okay? So, but it'll be more comprehensive than just programming languages, okay? All with me so far? I want to keep the session as interactive as possible, right? So the first thing I want to do is it's a huge claim that we're doing, right? So transforming the way we learn. So can I ask somebody from this side of the audience, what are some trends that you're seeing in learning recently? Someone from here. Any trends that you've read about, you've come across? Bite-sized information, okay. Anything else? Somebody from here? Yes? Social learning, self-paced learning. Somebody from here? More and more interactive. Okay. How many of you have heard the word MOOCs? You've heard MOOCs? Or what does MOOC stand for? Massive Open Online Courses. Great. Okay, so we're on the right page here. So what we're doing here is we're looking at these three at the moment. So we just discussed, we just heard about personalized learning. We also looked about MOOCs as well. And there's also this concept of flipped classrooms, right? Does anyone know what a flipped classroom is? Not very clear about it. Yes, at MIT they're using this. And what they're essentially doing is recording professors' lectures and using that as take-home assignments. So lectures are being viewed as take-home assignments, and there's activity in the classroom. Right? So there's a lot of interactivity and there's a lot of collaboration happening in the classrooms, and all the learning of the lectures happen at their homes, right? So this is what's happening. It's called the flipped classroom. All right. So let's firstly take a look at what are MOOCs. Okay. So MOOCs are basically massive open online courses, and so they help you in order to improve accessibility, right? So there's about 5 lakh people who are eyeing for 9,600 IIT seats. Okay, so that's the demand to supply ratio that we're looking at, right? So with that kind of demand that's there for engineering, it would be great to have MOOCs as a concept coming up in India, okay? Because you have a lot of accessibility to top quality content from Stanford, from MITs of the world, and so on, right? And then it allows you to learn at your own pace, and it democratizes content, okay? So great for MOOCs, but it has a problem. Can anyone from maybe that side of the audience, can anyone talk about what the issue is for MOOCs? Or anybody know what the issue is for MOOCs? What does gaming actually solve? And that's the issue that's there with MOOCs. Engagement levels, right? So there's great for democratizing content, right? But the completion rate that we're seeing in a website like Coursera is less than 5% on average. So we were talking with an MIT prof last week, and he mentioned that there were 40,000 students who signed up for his course, right? Just a guess on how many people actually completed that course? Any guesses? 4 or 5, that's pessimistic, but a little bit more. It was actually 55 to 60 people. Right? So if you look at it that way, you could have just completed the entire course in the classroom itself. Why do it online, right? So that's why we at Knowledgescape asked the same question. Okay, so with these emerging trends in learning, what are we doing? Okay, and I will answer that question as we go along, right? So experience is not solved. So they've solved the content access problem. Experience is not solved. The same is with the flipped classroom as well. What they have here is the traditional model. You're looking at the lectures in the classroom, and you're looking at homework and activity at home, right? That's a traditional model. The way it's coming up in the MITs right now is you have video lectures at home and then collaboration and practice in the classroom. Again, this does not solve the problem of solving real-world like problems, right? If you're given a real-life like situation, can you solve it, right? It doesn't solve that problem at all, okay? So we're looking at the third form of learning that we discussed was personalized learning. So again, the issue here is engagement is not there, but then different characteristics of the individual match to what they're presented with, and they get to learn that. One other disadvantage with personalized learning is you lose the freshness of discovery, right? So this idea of that you can discover new content is lost. Because it's personalized, it only comes to what your characteristics are, what your preferences are. You don't discover something else that you may be otherwise interested in. Okay? So given this this premise, what we're saying here is the knowledge and skill are solved. Okay, in terms of learning at least, we're looking at knowledge and skill being solved. What about action? And that's what we will solve today. Okay? Let me ask you this question again. Everyone identifies what this is, right? What is this? It's a cockpit, it's a flight simulator. Okay? So we're looking at, has anyone met a pilot who has read aerodynamics and started flying? Anybody? Hopefully not, right? You don't want to be on a plane who just studied a book on aerodynamics and then starts flying, right? Anybody who's met a doctor who hasn't worked on a cadaver before doing a surgery, before cutting open a patient? No, right? This has not happened. So why is it that for managers that you don't have a safe learning environment? Someone from there? Why is it for managers in the corporate world that you don't have a safe learning environment before you actually start learning? You finish an MBA, you become a manager. Why is that the case? Anybody wants to hazard a guess? Anybody from here has been most active here? It's not a life and death. How many of you want to challenge him on that? Not for the manager. That's a good way of looking at it. So if you look at all the crises that has happened, the 2008, 1987, 97, and so on, there have been careers which have been ground to a halt. I remember at this famous insurance company, if you walked in and your ID card didn't work, it meant you were fired, right? All these careers were lost because of certain decisions that managers took, and they walked away with millions, right? So it is a matter of life and death as well, right? And at Knowledgescape, that's what we're doing. We are in the process of creating safe learning environments for managers, all right, and so that they can experience certain business decisions before they actually take them in the real world, all right, and so that's what we are all about. So why are we into this space? Okay, let me ask you a riddle, and I promised you that this will be interactive, right? So let me ask you a riddle. The best place to hide a dead body is, and it has something to do with attention spans. Don't name any place in Bangalore, please. It's a riddle, okay? Anybody? I can see some smiles. If you know the answer, step up. Let me know what the answer is. Anybody? Okay, clue number 1. It has something to do with the internet. Want to just hazard a guess? What is the first company that comes to mind when I say internet? Sorry. Google. What about Google? Search engine, yes. So what has that got to do with hiding a dead body? Anybody? Okay, I'll give it to you. It's the second page of Google search results. How many of you actually go to the second page? Companies spend close to 82% of their of Google's revenues come from companies who want to invest on coming up in the first page. And the reason is because of decreasing attention spans. It has been found out that in the last decade, our attention spans have gone down by 33%, right? So it's huge, right? And a huge population is now entering the workforce after having mastered in gaming, okay? So, and that's what we're doing here, and that's why we're here as well at the Gamified conference as well, right? So this is a problem that we are addressing, okay? And if you look at the Maslow's hierarchy. How many of you already have seen this before? You've seen this, right? So if you start off with the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the first thing is food, water, shelter, warmth. What is the latest model of this now? What is the latest model here? Facebook, something related to that, it's Wi-Fi connection. Right? Isn't this true? Right? You actually, so I remember this, I walked into my hostel room back in my bachelor days, and the first thing I asked was, why is there no Wi-Fi? The first question I asked after coming to the conference here also was the same thing. Why is there no Wi-Fi here? Right? Because I'm even scrambling for a dongle and all those things, right? So this is what has happened to the current context in terms of learning also, but also at a broad level, the attention span levels as well. Okay? So what is the solution to this? So some people might just throw out this term saying gamifying learning. Okay? But like we saw in the first session, Mr. Yuka is not, but as you saw in the first session, it's not just about gamifying. It's not just about points, badges, right? It's very famously called the PPL, right? Points, badges, and leaderboards. It's not just about that, okay? It's about looking beyond that, and we'll address that as well, right? So what could we have done for programming languages? We'll come to the topic itself. We could have just taken normal code. We could have added badges to it. We could have added a leaderboard to it, and it would have solved the problem. But that's not what it's about, okay? There's a lot of context, which Mr. Rakesh also pointed out. There's a lot of context-specific problems that we need to solve. Okay? How many of you identify this game? Which one is this? Prince of Persia. What is he trying to do in the game? He's trying to kill? Kill, of course. But what is the end objective? What is he trying to do there? He's trying to save the princess, right? So that's the end objective. That's the story that you keep in mind. And all the other things, right? He drinks a potion bottle and gets a life, right? All those other things are game elements. But the context and the story is what keeps you going on, okay? And that's what we're doing here. It's also about storytelling, right? It's not just those game elements, but it's also about storytelling. It's about contextual elements that are playing here as well, right? So this is what we came up with, okay? This is a simulation which is meant for leaders, okay? It's called the iLead, all right? And so people who are becoming leaders for the first time, they do not usually have a long experience. If you look at Mark Zuckerberg, if you look at the former CIO of Starbucks, they don't have a huge amount of experience, right? But they're all becoming leaders very, very, very quickly. In fact, if you go back and read one of his interviews, he will say that I learned leadership because I played this game called StarCraft or World of Warcraft, I think, sorry. And that's how we learned strategy. And that's how we learned leadership skills, right? And so this particular game that we've built up on a particular academic framework, which is researched by MIT, is a game along those lines. You play this game, you'll actually learn leadership through it, right? It's so a number of managers who played it said, I never knew there were different styles that you should approach your followers with. When I say followers, your team members, right? And this is the game that allows you to make you aware of that, okay? Negotiation. Would you rather learn negotiation through a theory class, through ebooks, or while trying to save somebody from leaving an IPL team? And that's the story that's there behind this animated simulation that we've built. So you're actually, the person on the left is a negotiator. You are playing his role. You are helping that person try and save this person from leaving your IPL team, right? And we launched this right at the beginning of IPL, and it was also the time when there was the Harbhajan Singh controversy, right? So it was around those times that we did this, right? So how do you learn these concepts using an interesting storytelling method is what we solve through these products that I've been showcasing to you. Change Quest is another simulation in terms of influencing and negotiation skills. It also touches on negotiation. And so what we've done is we've taken the entire concept of learning through different decision-making methods and then applied them into a game environment, okay? And then we also got something on ProMan, which is project management, where a person is actually managing a live project. And he needs to be realistic about his effort estimates, managing his people well, and also be able to contribute to the margins of the project. Okay? So now let's come to the interesting bit. we talked about programming languages. How did we gamify this? So we're actually launching this product today, and we're also giving away free passes for whoever wants to try this out. It's at the booth outside, right? So what did we do here? Okay, so we took up this unique challenge. We said, how do we add a story to this? Okay, and how many of you are Agatha Christie fans? Sherlock Holmes? Okay, so where do you think I'm going with this? It's a detective. It's a mystery that you need to solve, right? So here's what we did. We came up with this concept called immersive gamification. I know there's a lot of terms that you're going through, but what is the difference between normal, those traditional gamification and what is immersive gamification? So let me just walk you through that, the way it is understood. Gamification itself is, let's say it's a motivation for you to do something, right? So you have reputation, you have achievements, you have number of those game design elements being applied to a non-game context, right? That's what we've understood so far, right? So let's take one onboarding platform. We're all clear what is an onboarding platform, right? So a platform which helps you to learn about company policies and processes, right? So let's imagine that a person who's joining the company for the first time goes through this platform, okay? Which means if he reads a particular policy or a process, right, he will then, let's say he earns a badge. He or she earns a badge, okay? He earns points, he earns badges. That is normal gamification. It's still valid, it's still applicable. But we have gone a step further than that. What if you make that person get immersed into that experience and make him test whether he's got that policy or not? Let's take one simple example. Let's say integrity is part of the core values of the company, okay? We then give them a real situation where he role plays a person or that role and he has to demonstrate integrity. Only then he gets a badge, right? So that is immersive gamification. And that's the differentiation that we've built on top of whatever we've been talking about, on top of the normal gamification techniques that have been spoken today. Okay? Any questions so far? Have I lost the audience completely here? Any questions? Okay, great. So we kept the code editor as it is. We kept the editor as it is. We built a compiler on top of it. Okay? So essentially, for non-techies here, so when you write code, you need to be able to compile it in order to make it more meaningful for the computer to understand. And hence, you have a compiler that we've built on top of it. And we went further and built a murder mystery around it. Okay? So you're a detective, and we purposefully call the detective Sheldon because of the popularity of the Big Bang Theory as well. And you are a co-detective as well. So you are a geek, right? Who can learn programming. I mean, who knows programming, who's an IT geek who can hack computers. He's actually called the hacker for the agency. And with you, along with the detective from the agency, need to crack this mystery. And the way you do it is through gamification, is through coding. Okay? You need to be actually able to write C program in order to solve this mystery. Isn't it exciting? Isn't it exciting where you have these normal ebooks, you have these do-it-yourself books, you have these online learning material, and then you have something like this, right? So the point here is these challenges are not, the other thing I wanted to mention here is the challenges are not separate from the programming language itself. I'll give you an example. In one of the challenges, you actually need to decode a particular barcode that is found from the diary of the person or the victim. Okay, and in the last level, there are about 8 levels that we have. In the last level, you need to find the shortest path to the airport because the killer is rushing to the airport, and you need to find the shortest path because you may miss the killer before flying to a different country. Okay, so how do you find the shortest path? So all of that goes into an algorithm that you need to write in C, and we've also built it as a platform, so you can actually learn 20 to 25 different programming languages using the same platform. Okay. So on top of all of this, we've also built in the usual suspects. So we've also built in badges on top of this, and also leaderboards. So if you are taking up this particular game, how proficient are you in a particular language compared to your peers or even others who played the simulation before? Okay. Any questions? So the way we look at this is it's definitely a leap forward, a leap ahead of what is already available. Okay, and we've made this exciting. So we look at number of applications that's available. So it's experiential, right? So it's not just on the on theory, right? You actually experience the whole thing. You actually solve a murder mystery as well, right? And we're looking at the IT job market. There are about 25 lakh graduates in India across the country, right? And out of which, I think, imagine the number of computer science graduates from that number. And we're only looking at, according to World Bank studies, we're only looking at 20% who are employable. Okay, so imagine if this kind of an interesting and an engaging experience being added on to democratization of content, personalized learning, and flipped classroom. Imagine the impact that it can have. It's huge, right? And then we're looking at even arresting attrition in companies. So you have these number of corporate training programs that happen in number of companies. No offense to anybody here, but those are lacking for engagement right now. There are a number of studies which actually talk about it, right? So we're looking at these kind of games and these kind of contextual case studies which really help in order to engage the audience better, in order to engage the employees much better. And as a result, we're also looking at arresting attrition as well, right? Because they're learning something in the organization, they would want to stick around, right? And as a result of that, it's always a continuous learning process. There are other issues as well, like incentives and other things as well. But when we look at the numbers for the people who are leaving the company, it's not just the numbers, it's not just finances. It's because they're not challenged enough, all right? Give them this kind of a co-detective, which is what we call it. Give them the challenge like that. It's going to do wonders for people who are working in the IT industry, and not just in India. We're looking at it as a global launch itself, right? And assessments and analytics. So the difference that we've brought here is the behavioral aspects are being measured, right? It's not just the functional and knowledge levels, but the behavioral aspects going beyond co-detective. Even the simulation that we showed, we captured about 200 decision points, and we're able to assess whether a person might stick on with the company for greater than 3 months to 4 months, or maybe longer. Okay, so it's able to cover all these 4 aspects in terms of applications, and it's huge. So when you look at why immersive gamification is the way forward, one of the things it does is it accelerates learning, right? So Mark Zuckerberg, being a CEO at the age of 29, needs to be able to know certain things, like what is organization politics. I never knew that term until I played the simulation called Change Quest, right? So those are things that, and a lot of us assume that this doesn't happen, but I'm sure that it's all happening in almost all the companies that I know of, at least. And you need to be aware of these things, because while you want to implement different change initiatives or ideas, you need to be able to navigate through these things, right? Provides a safe learning environment. We don't want to get into another 2008 situation. We don't want to get into another of any of those crises. It is a matter of life and death. There's a lot of risk involved, even when you're a corporate manager, and hence use these safe learning environments and these simulators in order to game, or in order to predict what might happen because of a certain decision, right? So one example that came to my mind right now is, let's say you're leading a team of 10 people, okay? And you happen to fire one person from the team. What is likely to happen to the morale of the entire team? Would it increase? It will go down. How many of you say it will go up? It will go down, you're saying. Depends on the person who's being fired, right? If the person is a top performer and he's being fired, then there's a lot of confusion that can happen, and people's morale might go down. But if a person who's pulling the entire team down and who needs to be fired, maybe there's a misfit, right? In those cases, the simulation will give you this feedback, right? This person should have been fired 3 weeks back. Why haven't you taken that decision yet? And as Indians, we're very averse to that. We don't get to that level. We get to it at the very last time. That's something which we learned from our simulation directly, from about 13,000 units of data that we had. We found out that we don't like to fire that easily. But compared to that, to an American audience or in the Singapore region, you'll actually look at very different numbers there. So we're able to play with a lot of behavioral analytics, which I think is going to be very, very useful once we have a data collection of that itself for the HR folks here, right? It also bridges gap between theory and practice. I think we're clear about it in that context. Produces demonstrable mindset changes. So one of the leading Fortune 500 firms that we were working with was, they said we're able to do all of this online, right? So e-learning, we've solved it. right? But how do I change their mindset? They don't want to push products. We want them to push solutions. And it's very different, right? When you look at solutions, you're actually understanding the customer's requirements and then building a solution for it rather than pushing your products forward. So we built a solution, we built a simulation for them where the customer would be exasperated because you were provided with products, we were pushed with products rather than solutions, right? And we completely gamified the entire experience with a story attached to it as well, right? And if you look at the leadership example, we've also built in a tragic element, right? He's leading a firm which is into elevator sales. Imagine Johnson Lifts, right? They're into elevator sales, and there's a tragic event that happens as a result of it, right? We put the leader in that spot and then see what will he do, right? There are people who actually go and engage with the audience better. There are people who fire everyone in the team, right? And that is extremely, how do I say, actionable insights that people can get at the end of playing the simulation. And there's a range of leadership styles that we see in the reports that follow, and which can then be used for further development and training as well. Okay. Increases engagement levels. We've seen stats of close to 67% on average in terms of increasing engagement levels. Delivers exceptional ROI. It's very easy to measure the ROI. We've also got a career assessment tool as well, which help you to assess different aspects of a particular career and what a person can do next, right? And that's all in the form of a game itself. They're actually organizing a college fest and using the analytical thinking concepts, how are they able to assimilate and then come up with a successful fest. Provides accurate assessment results, we've spoken about it, and enables personalized learning, right? So the design philosophy, immersive gamification, not just gamifying the experience, but putting that person in that situation and then seeing if the person can deliver or not, okay? And the 70-20-10 learning model, right? So this is where we talked about the formal learning, that's the classroom learning taking very less precedence right now compared to the on-the-job experience, okay? And on-the-job experience is the problem that we're solving with respect to our simulations and so on. And skill analytics, behavioral analytics, much more higher in value and actionable than normal functional knowledge-based analytics as such, right? Last few slides, these are the impact that we've delivered, 67% in engagement levels, 33% in retention, and 23% in skill levels. And when we say 23% in skill levels, we're looking at 24 different skills, right from oral communication to right down to stakeholder management. Okay, so we're looking at huge plethora of skills and a huge improvement as well. Okay, so key takeaways. MOOCs, e-learning, great for democratizing content, but lack in experience. Use experience to motivate. There was a beautiful slide by Mr. Rakesh on how you motivate laggards to perform and also to engage with the team itself, right? So this is a great way that this can deliver that. Immersive gamification to engage with the audience better. Provide a safe learning environment for managers because there is a huge amount of risk involved there as well, right? And assessment and analytics based on behavioral characteristics in addition to just being functional, and look at gamification beyond points, badges, and leaderboards. This is where your day started off with, and just want to leave you with that. And the last one is on Albert Einstein's quote on, to experience is to learn. Everything else is just information. All right, so with that, I would like to close my talk. If there's any questions that you have, I'll be happy to take them. And we also have as I was saying, if you want to experience the Code Ninja and the Code Detective games, we have a stall outside, so if you want to experience it, you can take a free pass and then have it. Any questions?